So I hope you enjoyed Uncle Milty. Amazing performer. By the way, his real given name was Mendel Berlinger, and Jack Benny's real name that he was born with was Benjamin Kubelski. So, of course, what you see here is Hollywood show business deciding that these entertainers and many other entertainers, famous entertainers, need to have a name change to be more commercially, I guess you could say, palatable back in those days across the country. And we talked about this last time in terms of the history of everything. And we talked about this too. It's early cell phone. I kind of remember these. And of course, that's what we have now. And we talked about trends. I added a few. Different media demands, different groups, shorter formats, avoidability, consolidation of ownership also within media companies, which we're going to talk about more. And now some new information. This is I pulled from the Gladys Marcus Library. You can see on the left is billions of dollars, and going across the bottom are different years. And here you see from 2011 to 2017, we're now up to 183 something $billion. So it's just a ongoing progression. It's from Group M, which is a big advertising agency. And here it is by medium. So what you see is what actually happened in 2017 and what's projected for 2021. And it's in billions. And of course, what you see is that internet now has more spending than television, and is projected to be an even higher share by 2021. But internet is first, television, then radio, newspaper, magazines, out of home, and on you go. So you see the trends. You see out of home going up. You see magazines relatively flat, newspaper going down, radio up just a little bit. But the real growth, of course, is in internet and mobile. Now, we talked about CPMs in the last class. Remember, that's one of the key ways that we evaluate different media. And you remember that CPM stands for cost per thousand people, per thousand impressions. And so what you see is going up on the left-hand side is dollars. That's your actual cost per thousand. And then you see going across the bottom different media types. So what you see, for instance, is spot TV, excluding prime time. And spot TV, by the way, is local TV. It's TV that just runs in a local market. It's not the network. It just runs in New York, just runs in Chicago. Or they buy multiple markets, but it doesn't run on the network. So spot TV, excluding prime time, is a very low CPM, but the prime time is expensive. Same thing with network TV. You see the overall CPM of radio is low. Overall CPM of video display on the internet is relatively low. Mobile CPMs are extremely low. General display advertising is low. Premium display means some kind of movement or something a little different with the creative, not just a standard banner. And next we have out of home. Okay, so out of home is very low CPMs. And digital place-based, however, which is, you remember I mentioned how a lot of out-of-home locations are becoming digitized, so they can change the advertising many, many times. And that has a high CPM because they ended up charging each if they could put 6 advertisers on one sign because it's digital and they can change it and run each ad every 6 seconds or 8 seconds or so. They charge each one of those advertisers almost as much as what they used to get from one advertiser. There you see magazines with a high CPM and also newspapers with a relatively high CPM. So this is an important chart for you guys to know. You should have an idea. You don't need to know exact numbers. That's a little too much. But you need to know what's expensive and what isn't. And we talked about this last time. So CPM is one way to evaluate. Quality of impressions is the second. Measurability is the third. Okay. Quality of impression. That's not kind of a cute little picture. That's an obvious one. Clutter is another issue with media. Certainly an issue with out of home. This is, this is Times Square, and we all live in New York. You go to Times Square, and there's signs everywhere. How does one of them stand out? So we talked about this the last time. Okay, all these talking about traditional media. We talked about these, the self-mailers. I do want to mention, as we talk about classic direct mail, just the overall importance of the envelope. And usually I ask my class, what's the job of the envelope in a direct mail piece? And the job of the envelope is to get opened as opposed to thrown away. It's a lot like the subject line in an email. Here's a classic direct mail piece. There's a lot of depth of sale, a lot of different things to open up and get involved with. We talked about catalogs last time. There's a new one, fairly new one. This is 2006, not so ancient, from LL Bean. A lot of you people know about LL Bean. And we talked about catalogs being a good way to expose the consumer to a variety of products, which is a little harder to do on the internet when you're likely to just search for one thing. And we talked about Cabela's. We talked about cooperative mailings like Valpak. There's a coupon. We all know what that is. And there's another example of teaser copy on the outside of the envelope that says Open Me. We talked about this data, which is on the MPA website, Magazine Publishers Association. We talked about this. We talked about walking you through. So I'm just going to go very quickly. Was trying to show you some of the newer things. We're not going to go to the ABC site, but you certainly can. You can just click that link if you want to go. Hopefully that'll get you there. And we talked about this. These are the major magazine companies. You see Hearst that I mentioned before. They've got their offices right here in New York. Pretty much all of them do. Have their headquarters here. Hearst is Cosmopolitan. Lots of magazines. It's over on Esquire. It's over on, 57th and 8th, I think it is. They have a big new tower, beautiful lobby, and by the way, great food in the cafeteria. Condé Nast is sort of the gold standard of magazines there. Vogue magazine, I know you all probably read some of these. Vogue magazine, Vanity Fair, The New Yorker, GQ, Bon Appetit, and they just moved down to, I think, the new World Trade Center. Meredith is kind of America's magazines in a way. Their headquarters are actually in Des Moines, Iowa, but they've got a big office here in New York. They publish Family Circle, Ladies' Home Journal. They just bought some titles from Time Inc. Time Inc. I should really take off the list now, honestly. This was an older slide, and I apologize for that. But they've now been broken up and kind of sold off. Here are top magazines in the U.S. ranked by circulation. And believe it or not, AARP's magazine, because everyone who's a member gets the magazine automatically, is the largest circulation with 23,721,000. And then you see it drop off pretty closely. Meredith, Better Homes and Gardens is 4. Reader's Digest is up there. National Geo's up there. Good Housekeeping from Hearst is up there. But you see the same companies. People now is published by Meredith. And I apologize to everyone. I should have updated these slides. But all of Time Inc.'s magazine assets have been sold off. And we talked about advantages and disadvantages. And that's magazines. Newspapers. We also talked about all these things. These are the different sections in a newspaper, which is a way for advertisers to target. These are there's some FSIs, freestanding inserts on the left there, that, as you know, are published separately. They're full of coupons. They're inserted in Sunday newspapers. Here are the largest circulation newspapers. USA Today from the Gannett Company, the New York Times, the New York Times Company, the Wall Street Journal, which is Rupert Murdoch now, the News Corp, Los Angeles Times has changed ownership. So you can see newspaper circulation is nowhere near what some of the bigger magazines are. And here are some of the sort of retail ads that tend to run, particularly in the old days, but in newspapers. And that's what happens to yesterday's papers. Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay. So this is just a summary, and you saw that in the last piece. So now we're going to go into a little more depth on radio, and then TV, and then out of home. So radio became a major medium for direct response in the 20s. And it had programming. They broadcast sports. They had news. They had music. They had regular programming, and they used that to segment audiences. It's a strong medium today. Tends to be more of a local medium, though, not much in terms of network radio anymore. Radio listeners tune into less than 3 stations regularly. TV viewers continuously switch channels. I can tell you in my home, my dogs like NPR. So, and we went through this. Some of the information on the history of radio, which is pretty interesting. Radio today, network radio, as I said, is a very small player. The network radio shows are like Rush Limbaugh, Don Imus, Shadow Traffic. It's about $1 billion only in revenue. But local radio, buying a local market, is where the dollars are going. However, there is a trend now that you can get radio, quote-unquote, broadcasts now from internet, satellite radio, and so there's some changes there, too. And that tends to be more network, by the way. Radio is sold by day part. And here's a lot of text, but I guess I just want you to please read it. But the main day parts are here. You've got your morning drive time, your midday, which morning drive time obviously is the hot one and costs a lot more money. You got midday, you got afternoon drive time, the other big hot time, and then evenings. And then overnight. Some stations just stop broadcasting overnight, others don't. Radio is measured, the listenership is measured by a company called Arbitron. And this is how they do it in 294 cities. They offer it every day, and that's how they do it. Radio broadcasters, the networks, everybody buys the information.